Deep in the jungles of Cambodia, hundreds of stone faces look out from the towers of an ancient temple. They are serene, enormous, and they have been watching the jungle reclaim the city around them for nearly 800 years. Nobody who built them is remembered in any Cambodian chronicle. The king who ordered every single one of them carved has been almost entirely erased from official history. And yet, what he built still stands. His name was Jayavarman VII, and at its peak under his rule, the Khmer Empire was the most powerful kingdom in all of Southeast Asia. It stretched from what is now Vietnam in the east, across Cambodia, into Thailand, Laos, and down toward the Malay Peninsula. No kingdom in the region came close to matching it. Jayavarman was born around 1120, a prince of the Khmer royal family. His early life is not well documented, but inscriptions suggest he spent years away from the capital, living in the neighboring Champa kingdom in what is now central Vietnam. He was a prince, watching and waiting, while other men sat on the throne. The Khmer capital, Angkor, was one of the great cities of the medieval world. Its temples were monumental. Its hydraulic system, a vast network of canals and reservoirs, made agriculture possible on a scale few civilizations had achieved. It was wealthy, powerful, and, in 1177, completely unprepared for what was coming. The Champa Kingdom, Khmer's longtime rival, launched a surprise attack unlike anything Angkor had faced before. Their fleet sailed up the Mekong River, crossed the Great Tonle Sap Lake, and arrived at Angkor from the water. It was a route nobody had defended. Nobody had even considered it. Angkor fell. The ruling king was killed. The city was looted and occupied. For the Khmer people, it was a catastrophe. Their capital, the spiritual and political center of everything they knew, was in foreign hands. Jayavarman was in his mid-50s. He had spent decades as a prince waiting for his moment. Now the moment had arrived in the worst possible way. His kingdom was shattered. Its king was dead. Its capital was occupied. He did not wait, he began organizing. Within a few years, Jayavarman had gathered a Khmer army and confronted the Cham invaders in a great naval battle on the same lake they had crossed to take Angkor. The battle was decisive. The Champa forces were defeated and driven out. The walls of his temples would later be covered in carvings of that very battle, so that no one who visited them would ever forget what had been won. In 1181, at the age of 61, Jayavarman VII was finally crowned king of the Khmer Empire. Most rulers his age were already fading. He was just beginning. He did not stop at reclaiming what had been lost. He expanded. His armies moved north into modern Laos, south toward the Malay Peninsula, west into parts of Burma and Thailand. He even turned back and conquered Champa itself, the kingdom that had sacked his capital, making it a vassal state of the Khmer Empire for 30 years. But what made Jayavarman VII truly different from almost every Khmer king before him wasn't military. It was religious. His predecessors had been Hindu. Jayavarman was a devout Mahayana Buddhist, and his faith shaped every decision he made as king. He ordered the construction of an entirely new capital city, Angkor Thom, meaning great city. It was surrounded by walls 8 meters high and a wide moat. 5 enormous stone gates led into the city, each topped with a tower bearing 4 giant faces looking in every direction. The city covered more than 9 square kilometers. At its peak, it may have housed over 1 million people. At the center of Angkor Thom stood the Bayon, Jayavarman's greatest temple. 54 towers covered in more than 200 enormous stone faces, each one serene, each one gazing outward across the empire. Historians still debate whether the faces represent the bodhisattva of compassion, the king himself, or both at once. He built temples for his parents as well. Top Rome, one of the most breathtaking temple complexes ever constructed, was dedicated to his mother. At its height, the temple employed tens of thousands of people in its upkeep, including priests, servants, and hundreds of dancers. Then he did something that no previous Khmer king had done on this scale. He built infrastructure for ordinary people. A network of roads stretched out from Angkor Thom to every corner of the empire. Every 15 kilometers along those roads stood a rest house, a shelter for travelers, merchants, and soldiers. 121 of them in total. He also built hospitals, 102 of them spread across the empire from its center to its furthest edges. An inscription from one of those hospitals still survives. It reads that he felt the suffering of his subjects in his own body, because a king's glory is not in his power, but in the relief of his people's pain. He ruled for more than 30 years. The pace of building never stopped. Temples, roads, reservoirs, hospitals, rest houses, provincial shrines. The scale of what he ordered constructed was staggering and has never been repeated in Khmer history. He died around 1218, possibly over 90 years old. An extraordinary lifespan for any era, let alone the 12th century. And then something very strange happened. His successor converted back to Hinduism. And in the process, many of Jayavarman's Buddhist monuments were deliberately defaced, statues smashed, inscriptions altered. Later Khmer rulers simply did not include him in their chronicles at all. The man who had built more than any other king in Khmer history simply disappeared from the official record. After the empire declined and the capital was eventually abandoned in the 15th century, the jungle moved in. Trees grew through walls. Roots cracked stone. The city that once housed 1 million people became home to birds and silence. For centuries, the outside world barely knew it had existed. When French explorers encountered the ruins in the 19th century, they could barely believe what they were seeing. Temples on a scale that rivaled anything in Egypt or Rome, hidden under centuries of jungle growth, with no surviving written history to explain who had built them or why. It took decades of archaeological work to piece together who Jayavarman VII was and what he had done. The story had to be reconstructed almost entirely from stone inscriptions, temple carvings, and the buildings themselves. Today, the temples of Angkor draw millions of visitors every year. The stone faces of the Bayon are among the most photographed images in all of Southeast Asia. In Cambodia, Jayavarman VII is revered as the greatest king in the nation's history. His face appears on currency. Statues of him stand in cities across the country. He came to power at 61 after decades of waiting. He drove out the invaders who had destroyed his capital, built an empire that stretched across Southeast Asia, and then filled it with roads and hospitals and temples, unlike anything the region had ever seen. His name was erased from his own kingdom's history. His city was swallowed by the jungle. And the stone faces he carved still watch over it all, completely undisturbed, nearly 800 years later.